Medicaid pays for rural hospitals. That's a big part of how rural hospitals survive. And this is just going to be absolutely devastating for that and devastating for so many people.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Chuck Corra is a host of Apodlatcha. Apodlatcha is a podcast and media project about about news, politics, culture in Appalachia. Chuck, welcome back. I think we've had you on the program before. Chuck, welcome back to the Valley Labor Report. I appreciate you taking the time, and sorry for getting to you a little late.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me back. And I do believe I've been on once before to talk about JD Vance. So,
that's right. Yes.
Happy to be back.
So, you recently for Apodlatcha did an accent project. I want you to talk a little bit about that and explain what it is and why you did it. And one of the things that you asked people to do is to say Appalachia. And so tell me first, am I saying it right? And then tell me about the project.
Yeah, so I have a very controversial position, which is I'm not going to judge somebody with how they say it anymore. I've grown from that position, and I know that people have a lot of very strong opinions on that. I understand it. I say it Appalachia. I think that there is historical precedent for that based on its origins with the Appalachian tribe. I won't get into all that right now, but there are a lot of people that say it differently, and that's totally fine. The reason why I did the accent project. So what I did is I used the network of people that we had through our social media and everything else that we've cultivated over the years, and asked people to just submit a voice memo of them saying a quick prompt. I wrote out a short script that said, "This is my Appalachian accent. This is how I say Appalachia." And I asked people to just send us an email and see what we could get. And, I had no idea that we would get over 1,500 responses, which was crazy. And throughout all 13 states in the Appalachian region, we got almost every one of the 423 counties in the ARC, the Appalachian Regional Commission counties. And the reason why I wanted to do this is, so I've been doing this show and had this media platform for a little over 5 years. And one of the things that we've heard from many people is that, so they grew up having an accent, and they were often told that they needed to get rid of it or suppress it or hide it in order to excel in life or to be taken seriously in a professional environment, to not be looked at as dumb or uneducated or ignorant. And I think that that's a real shame, because there's nothing wrong with having an accent. It's something that you should be proud of. It's something that you should value. And it's a cultural signifier of where you come and who you are. And so one of the things that I hope to accomplish with this was to, I think, destigmatize, if that's the word. I don't know if it is, but I'm going to say that it is. To destigmatize and normalize having an accent, and to show people that there is real beauty in it and that there's nothing wrong with it. And it doesn't mean that you're dumb or ignorant. It just means that you're a normal person from one of these places. And so I was able to compile over 1,500 of them from all across the region, including Alabama, and put them together into one large compilation, which is available on our YouTube channel. And it was really interesting. I mean, there's so much variation just even between counties upon counties in Appalachia and places like West Virginia, Alabama, Pennsylvania, and the way that people pronounce Appalachia and the way that they just have different inflections. So it was really, really fascinating. It was something that I'm really proud of that we've done.
Yeah. Was there any, what were some of the, I don't know, any interesting observations come out of that accent project? What were some general thoughts on it after having done it?
So one of the things I found most interesting is that there definitely can be some variation between counties. Different people sound differently, even if they're from the same county. Now, maybe they're a transplant or somebody that maybe has lived there longer than somebody else, but there's always variation. And the one thing that I found interesting, and the whole reason I wanted the prompt to say Appalachia is because I wanted to compare how people pronounced it. And I put together a map based on counties and pronunciations at one point. It's somewhere available on our social media. where it just maps out like the different pronunciation of Laisha versus Lacha. And you can see a very clear distinction between Central Appalachia being more Latch and Southern and Northern Appalachia being Lay. And I found that interesting. I don't necessarily have an explanation for why that is, but it's just interesting how that regional pronunciation and dialect can change based on where you are in the region and what people consider to be Appalachia versus what is more like cultural versus the government defined part of the region.
Your this accent project is really pretty emblematic, I think, of your project as a whole. You do a podcast, you do different media stuff, you're on like social media and talking about culture and commentary and politics within Appalachia. I guess how would you describe Appalachia as a project, and what are you hoping to do with that as a vehicle?
Yeah, I mean, it's evolved over the years. It started, and I guess you could say it still is. The reason what we wanted to do is we wanted to start a podcast, and now kind of turn into a media platform to be a counter narrative to what was the negative stereotypes about Appalachia, but also just the notion that the region is nothing but just right-wing politics and people. I think that there's a lot more nuance to the region of Appalachia than what maybe the mainstream media portrays it as, or just people's general idea of what the region is. I think there's a lot of assumptions and generalizations about Appalachia. And I think that there's a lot of stories that deserve to be told. And so we approach it from a progressive leftist perspective. And that's something that I think was very much missing from that conversation, especially in 2019 and late 2019 when we started the show, but even still now, where you don't see a lot of those voices being amplified from Appalachia. And that's something that we've tried to do. And I've tried to highlight really important people from the region or who are talking about the region and show that there are diverse voices from Appalachia that are not just the archetype of people that I think are commonly generalized as being from the region. And so that's what I've tried to do with it. We've highlighted really important voices. We've talked about important issues, and we've shown that like this region is not a monolith. It's not just a bunch of, right-wing MAGA people. It's very complex. And I think that we've tried to show that throughout the 5 years of our existence. And that's what I've been hoping to continue doing and just building on the platform that we've created.
Right. Well, now for some of the less fun stuff. This one big, beautiful bill passed last week. It's been signed into law. You're in Tennessee. You're from Appalachia. I can't remember if you're originally from Tennessee. But, what are people in your neck of the woods saying about this bill? Regular folks, politicians, media figures. What's some of the feedback that you're hearing?
Yeah. So I'm originally from West Virginia, and that's where a lot of my family lives. And I live in Tennessee now. I live in the Appalachian part of East Tennessee. And this bill is terrible. It's not good. And I shouldn't say a bill anymore. It was signed into law yesterday. So it's a law. It is law in this country. And you asked about the politicians. So a lot of the politicians, they're at least outwardly for it because, either they genuinely support it or they have to support it because it's backed by Donald Trump. And that's what the political people are saying in this region and what they voted. I mean, Tennessee and West Virginia's senators all voted for it. I believe their entire congressional delegations voted for it, except for, I think Tennessee has one Democrat that didn't vote for it. But it's really scary because the people, so you asked about how the people are doing this. And I would say that from the folks I've talked to, most people didn't know about this bill until very late in the game. Very, very late in the game. And that, I think, is, I would fault, honestly, the Democrats a lot for that. I think they should have been talking about this and doing a lot more to really get this into the conscience of people earlier. Because one of the biggest, I think, most devastating parts of this new law is the cuts to Medicaid. And Medicaid, I mean, for people that just don't really know, it's the single largest health insurance program in the United States. It covers 71 million low-income, disabled, and elderly U.S. residents. And I think one thing that is particularly troubling is that I believe like a lot of people in the region and just throughout the country don't necessarily know that this is going to impact them. Like, for example, in Tennessee, the program that is administered by the state is called TennCare. So if you're on TennCare, you might not realize that that's actually Medicaid.
Right.
Because I mean, it's not all completely Medicaid, but some of it is Medicaid. And so you might not realize you're on Medicaid. You're on TennCare. Or like, I think in Connecticut, it's called Husky Care or something like that. In California, it's like Medi-Cal. So a lot of states have different names for their programs. That's like one kind of little quirky issue that I think has been really troubling for people to understand the impact it has on them. But I mean, I've seen estimates anywhere from like 11 to 17 million people could lose their coverage within the next 5 to 10 years on Medicaid. And these are people that desperately need it. This is something where, like, just to put it in perspective, Medicaid covers half of all U.S. births. It pays for the care of 6 in 10 nursing home residents. And like this bill over the time, I've seen estimates where it's going to cut over time, like close to $1 trillion in cuts to the program. Now that to me is insane. And I think the biggest impact it's going to have on Appalachia. This is a region where we rely on rural hospitals. It's a region that's a very rural region. And even before this new bill was signed into law, we already had huge problems with rural hospital closures, especially in Tennessee. They were closing all the time in Tennessee. This is going to exacerbate that tremendously because Medicaid pays for rural hospitals a lot. That's a big, huge part of how rural hospitals survive. And this is just going to be absolutely devastating for that and devastating for so many people that are on this program. They're benefiting from it and are going to have such a devastating awakening when they realize they're no longer going to be covered.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
It really is concerning how little attention there was on this in the media, I think, until like the last week, until basically the bread was buttered, so to speak. And and it like there just wasn't much from state level Democrats here in Alabama talking about it. Even though, the AFL-CIO, I was in some calls where the AFL-CIO was trying to do a bunch of communication around this, and they had Tupperville as a target for this in the Senate because he is going to be governor of Alabama probably in 2026. I don't know if you knew that, Chuck, but very bad, very concerned
Lord
about.
Have mercy.
Yeah, very concerned about that. He's announced that he's not running for re-election in the Senate. He is running for governor of Alabama, and the guy who had been like his entire career trying to become governor of Alabama, the current lieutenant governor, Will Ainsworth, almost immediately announced that he wasn't going to be running. He would be, abstaining and endorsing Tupperville, which is, Will, you wouldn't know, but Will Ainsworth is really, really bad. And I would much prefer Ainsworth be governor because like Ainsworth is he knows some things and Tupperville is just so dumb and he has he has shown zero interest in even just understanding things in the Senate. Every time that he goes
just learning,
reading. Every time that he goes viral or anytime that he ever talks, it's all just talking points and like there's nothing about how he wants to bring home good things for working people in Alabama. And at least, Ainsworth is always talking about expanding the interstate or whatever. And it's like, well, we should really probably be talking about something different, like transit or something like that. But at least he's got ideas and he's competent. And I'm just so concerned about Tupperville being up. But anyway, I'm sorry, I got off on the wrong track. They were targeting Tupperville because he's going to be governor of Alabama in 2026, and he's going to have to deal with the fallout from this. And still, we couldn't. He didn't move. And I don't know. How do you think that? What do you think that folks like you and me and unions and maybe rank and file Democrats or rank and file progressive voters. How can we make, out the institutions that are supposed to be opposed to these sorts of things more active in opposing these sorts of things?
Man, that's a $1 million question. So I'm with you in that I think that I have a theory as to like why they were behind the eight ball. I truly think that there were a lot of Democrats that believed that this wasn't going to go anywhere because of the Medicaid cuts, because the Medicaid, like cuts to Medicaid, Social Security, and Medicare have always been viewed as like a third rail in American politics. It's something you just don't do because they're so incredibly unpopular. And this administration, Trump in general, in his first term in now, has shown time and time again that you can violate any type of norm in American politics and still survive it. I mean, and if they have not learned this rule yet, then I don't know when. I don't think they're ever going to learn it. And this is one of the most. I think this is the largest cut to Medicaid in American history. This is one of the most catastrophic bills I think I've ever seen in our lifetime, and I just don't really understand why there was not a larger sense of urgency. I mean, there's a huge sense of urgency about a Muslim socialist winning a Democratic primary for New York City, but for this, not so much. And so I think that I really think that it's incumbent upon people to really communicate like what the source of these issues are, because like we're going to see the catastrophic impact of this in the next like few years. And I think the danger of it though is that some of these cuts are going to come into effect when Trump is out of office.
Yep.
And there very well could be a Democrat in office, and the Democrats will get blamed for those cuts no matter what. That's just how politics works. And honestly, there's probably parts of this bill that are designed in order to do that. And so I really think that people need to be relentless with how they hold, especially Democrats' feet to the fire, and not be accepting of just the norms and status quo anymore. Because look, I've come really, I think my views have evolved on this, because I used to be more of a, move the ball forward, progress. We need like, incremental progress is fine kind of person. But like, I just don't think that it's really good enough anymore. And sorry, my dog is talking in her sleep in the background. So if you hear a woof, that's what that is. And so I think that there just has to be tremendous amount of public pressure. I really think that this is unconscionable that this is allowed to pass in a United States Congress that is this divided. I really it is unconscionable that this is allowed to pass. This is the margins in this Congress are razor thin. And here's the other thing. Like, I don't believe, I could be wrong on this, so don't quote me, but I believe there's at least one member of Congress who died in office, a Democrat, Jerry Connolly.
I thought there was like 4.
I think there is. I can't remember. I know that his seat is not filled yet. I don't know if the other ones are filled. I'm not positive. I don't think they are. But there's been at least 3 or 4. Sylvester Turner was another one. And if any one of them had been able to vote, they could have voted down this bill. Mm-hmm. And that's a whole other conversation of like this. We have a problem with gerontocracy in that party, but we also have a problem of like, we need people that are going to be like harder fighters and be able to be better communicators in the party to actually communicate to the people like the absolute unmitigated disaster of the policies that are being passed. Like I truly believe that this is one of the most catastrophic bills that has ever passed the Congress in our, at least in my lifetime. Like not in the life of Congress. Like, look, the Fugitive Slave Act was like categorically one of the worst things ever, but it is just, it's so disheartening, but you can't give up, because if you give up, it's going to get worse. And especially if you give up, it's like the people that stand to lose the most, the working poor, they're the ones that lose the most from this bill, from this new law. And they're the ones who need people fighting for them now. And I think that institutions like unions are really important in this fight, because unions are an important resource on the left, certainly, that can organize and get results better than some other institutions. But I also think that I think that more people, I think that there needs to be more leaders that inspire hope in people. I would say that too, because I think that part of the issue is that there's just such a motivation gap in the activist organizer space right now, because they're just seeing like Democrats not being able to stop this or just not being inspired by this. I do think that Zoran Mamdani is a exception to that, because I do think that he inspired a lot of people. And so I hope that there's more individuals like him that can inspire people across the country. But I don't know. I really think that the pressure needs to be amplified on the opposition party, and in that case is the Democrats right now, because this is just, I don't think people appreciate just how bad this new law is.
Yeah. It's really gonna be bad. There was something that you've talked about on your program and on social media before, is some of the like attitude that people outside of the South and outside of Appalachia have towards the people here, because of how many of them vote. And when I originally reached out, I had noted that, I haven't been seeing just a whole lot of sort of screw them attitude this go round, at least in the last week or so. I did sort of as the bill was beginning to be proposed. But I saw something last week. There's a reporter, Matt McDermott, on Twitter saying that Curtis is a small town of 900 people in rural southwest Nebraska. It's not Appalachia, but, it's kind of a, the dynamic is similar. Curtis is a small town of 900 people in rural southwest Nebraska. The Curtis Medical Center announced yesterday that it is closing after more than 30 years. It is the only healthcare provider in the community. They blame Trump's Medicaid cuts. And now I'm not totally sure exactly why that. I mean, maybe it's just because they're already so, they're running on such thin margins now that they can't make it. I don't know, because the Medicaid cuts don't kick in until like the end of 2026. So is that true? You'd have to check the reporting. But anyway, this guy quote tweeted him with how how the community voted. And it was like 87% of the people that voted for Trump. And, Nathan Robinson, editor-in-chief of Current Affairs, said that you can respond to this by concluding that these people deserve to be screwed by Trump, or by asking why the Democrats have failed so badly that people would rather be eaten alive than support Democrats. And I think that's like, that's, even if you don't feel that way, right? Even if it feels like, I want him to eat dirt or whatever, like, people have to recognize that is the better thing, the better attitude to have politically. But then this guy, and he got, something like 1,000 likes on Twitter. So it's not huge, but it's a guy that I happen to know. I've been on his program before, and so like I'm probably not going to go anymore. But he said, "F you and your pompous navel-gazing BS and your pathetic excuses for these belligerent dumbasses. Rural Americans refuse to vote Democrat because they're the dumbest, most bigoted pieces of shit in the country. That's it. That's literally it. Let them rot." And so, I'm like, okay, that seems pretty that seems kind of bigoted, actually. And so I don't know, what do you make of when you come across folks with that sort of attitude?
Yeah, I get it a lot, and it's deeply frustrating. Look, I'll say this, I understand the sentiment of being extremely frustrated, mad, angry at people who voted the way that they did. I get it. And I live in Tennessee. Okay. I'm from West Virginia. I've lived in Florida. I've lived in all parts of this country where it's a deeply red part of this. I get it. But what I always see is like, usually when it comes from people that like the people that say that usually build themselves as being very high-minded intellectuals. And I think it's one of the most like anti-intellectual arguments you could make, because you're making a gross generalization about an entire group of people, rural Americans, or an entire state, a very complex place that really is just arbitrary lines drawn on a map. it just like the gross generalizations are really, I think, harmful because it creates such a communication breakdown in how we talk with each other and how we view each other in this country. And one of the things that I think is so frustrating about it is it shows such a lack of solidarity, both with people who did not vote like that in those areas, because there are a lot, with people who didn't vote because they didn't feel like the Democrats presented to them anything that was better. Which, look, I understand people's feelings about that. I don't necessarily agree with that a lot, but I understand where people are coming from if they feel like that. And it also is like, even if somebody voted for Donald Trump, I don't want their Medicaid ripped away from them and their lives jeopardized and them potentially die, because that is what will happen when they lose Medicaid. And this is like, also, I think internet just desensitizes people. We see this all the time when there's like a natural disaster in Kentucky or West Virginia. We always get the FAFO. Oh, you voted for this. No, not a single person voted to have their lives destroyed, their families killed, their home washed away in a flood. Not a single person. So this attitude is it's a very privileged attitude, because a lot of those people, I believe, don't have like anybody in their lives that voted for Donald Trump, for example. Whereas people, like, if you grew up in Appalachia in the South, I guarantee you have a family member that did, or somebody close to you that did. And it makes it like you have complicated relationships with those people sometimes, but you also learn that, like, you don't win back those people. You don't have like, you have to be able to have conversations with those people in order to actually build effective coalitions if you're trying to win back power in any type of government or anything like that. Like, you can't just cast aside those people, because they're people at the end of the day. And there's a lot of reasons that cause people to vote the way that they do. The other thing I'll just say, and to put a button on that, is like, I think what drives me the most crazy about this is, again, the gross generalizations about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the reason why that drives me crazy is because, like, my podcast, the media platform I've created, is kind of stands to be a force against that type of behavior. The people that say these things, they're basing these opinions based on an electoral map with a binary color set, red and blue. And that tells you nothing about a state other than who went out and turned out to vote for an election. That's it. You know, it doesn't tell you about the gerrymandering in a state. It doesn't tell you about the voter suppression that occurs in the state. It doesn't tell you about the access that people have to polling locations in the state. It doesn't tell you about anything about that state at all. It doesn't tell you about, like, you know, the hundreds of thousands or millions of people that didn't vote that way in the state. And I think it really is dismissive of people who are trying to do a lot of work in those places to make it a better place to live for people, who are trying to make it a place that's safe for trans people to live, or for people of color to live, or for people to, like, give birth to children who may need access to abortion or something. And so it makes that job so much harder. And I can tell you that from a firsthand example. And I work with, I talk with, and I work with a lot of people who do mutual aid, and it really just makes them so angry when they see people. And it's a lot of times it's like these lefty liberal people who say those types of things. And it makes them so angry, because they're like, we're building community out here. We're trying to help people. We don't ask who they voted for. We're just trying to help them survive. And that's oftentimes what a lot of people are doing. And so I just think that it's such a callous way of viewing an entire set of people that you clearly don't know anything about. And it's lacking in this type of solidarity that we need in order to move forward and to actually, like, live in the type of world that you want. Like, if you want the type of policies that make your life better, you need an effective coalition that's going to bring in people that you otherwise are not going to agree with. That's just reality. That's life. People don't vote, like, based on just binary things like that. There are a lot of Trump voters that would 100% support a lot of very progressive and even leftist policies if you talk to them and brand it in a way that's different. I guarantee you that, because I've talked to many of them.
Right. And I mean, even in places like Alabama, I mean, Alabama went for Trump. One of the in one of the highest numbers of any state in the country. And even still, a majority of eligible voters in the state did not vote for him.
Yep.
I mean, he won 65% of the people that voted, but only 58.5% of people voted in 2024. So, there was something like 3.8 million registered voters roundabouts in Alabama, and only 1.46 million voted for Trump. So a majority of people did not vote for Donald Trump in Alabama, and that is totally left out of these big generalizations. So, well, Chuck, I really appreciate your time. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on before we let you go?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered it. I really appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate the work that you all do. I think it's really important that the Valley Labor Report exists, especially in a place like Alabama. I think the work that you do to support unions and just lift up the type of working class people that really make our world what it is, but Alabama what it is incredibly important. So I want to just express my gratitude for you and for the work that you all do.
Appreciate it, Chuck. Same to you, and look forward to having you on again soon.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.
Which side are you on?